Hey folks,
Yeah.
wish you a very happy new year. This is the first video I'm recording for the year 2022. So I just want to thank you all for being supporting the entire YouTube channel last year. And I promise bringing all the great content this year as well. So today we have Sravya, who has recently joined APM as an APM at Uber. Welcome, Sravya.
Hey, hi, Sugat. Thanks a lot for inviting me and doing this interview experience with me. I have no idea how many messages I've gotten to share my APM interview experience. I'm really glad that we are doing this in this way. Yeah.
Awesome. I think this video is pretty special, not only because it's about, APM, but here we'll also get to know what actually is an APM program, which we have been hearing a lot in the US and something it has started recently in India as well. So pretty excited to, watch and hear your experience as well. So why don't you get started, Shavya?
Okay, that's amazing. So I actually prepared a PPT, so I'm just going to share my screen.
Awesome.
Uh, All right. So why don't we get started with my introduction? I'm Sravya, and I'm currently working as an APM with Uber as a part of their Emerging Product Leaders program. I recently graduated from ISB in the year 2021 in August, and before that, I was actually working with Schneider Electric for 3 years. I was a business analyst there. I was working on enterprise IT products. Before that, I graduated from Pilani in the year 2017. So that's a little bit about myself. Um,
Cool. Thanks a lot, Shravya. It's very great to know about you and what you have been doing so far. Before we next move forward, right, I just wanted to call out this video is sponsored by Relevel by an Academy. Relevel is India's first hiring platform which gives you a chance to get a job in your dream company. You neither need a degree nor experience to get a job through Relevel. You can prove your skill by taking the re-level test and getting a job in your dream company. The best part is this platform is completely free of cost. Currently, Re-Level is conducting tests in 9 categories, and recently they have launched a new test, Associate Product Management Test, which offers salaries up to 25 LPA. Jobs are offered from big companies like Swiggy, Hike, Bread, Razorpay, Yatra, Paytm. There are 200 plus leading companies hiring from Re-Level at this moment. By just putting your basic details on the platform, you can register for the test completely for free. Please don't miss this opportunity. I would recommend you to register for the test right now. Link in the description. So, Shavya, why don't you go ahead and tell me what is about APM program all about?
okay, so actually, that's a very interesting question. APM programs are typically uh, these are the programs which are designed for young graduates with less than 3 years of experience and to get into the world of PMing. These programs are really amazing. Typically in the US at least, so there is Google APM program, Twitter APM program, Facebook, or like there's Meta APM program. Typically what happens is all these like very large product companies, they recruit people either straight from colleges, either B schools or like undergrads, or they recruit people with less than 3 years of experience in order for them to get into the world of PMing. These are typically rotational programs, typically 18 months program, 3 rotations, and on an average each rotation is of 6 months. And you get to work with different teams, three different teams within the organization. You get to network, you will have access to mentorship, you will have access to resources. And often what is more interesting is also that you get to work on different problem statements which are at different phases themselves. For example, it's possible that in one team you will get to work on acquisition related problems, but in the other team you are maybe trying to implement some sort of policy or regulatory requirements into the product. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, the networking opportunities and the mentorship opportunities are also endless. So that is what happened in the US in the last 20 years. However, we sort of see a similar trend in India as well. I think Flipkart is one of the companies in India which started an APM program a few years ago. And now Uber also has its own APM program, which is of similar style. It's an emerging product leaders program, wherein they recruit this year at least, like they recruited only from ISB, and I get to work with 3 different teams, 6 months each, for 18 months, and then I hopefully graduate into a product manager at the end of my stint. Apart from Uber and Flipkart, like there are other companies which we see like PhonePe and Swiggy and all these other companies who are hiring from these schools into their APM programs. So yeah, I think it's a pretty exciting time to be a product manager, because so far it's only if you want to become a PM, you already need to have some experience. Like there were no elaborate mentoring programs so far. Like at least like not every company took the initiative to sort of specifically design like a PM program. But today, given that the product manager role is also evolving, we see all these different kinds of programs and initiatives by larger companies as well, which is really nice, really exciting.
Hey, great to hear that, Sravya. So what actually happens after this 18th month? Like you placed in that same company, or you have to interview again for the product role after the APM program?
So I think it depends from company to company and how the policies are. If you look at some of the Google APM program experiences or even Uber APM program experiences from the US, typically you are an APM for 18 months, and it's almost like a mini MBA of sorts. Like it's a course essentially, and you graduate the course to become a product manager. So it's like a learning program, very hands-on learning program. You get to learn different aspects of PMs. You get to interact with different PMs of different organizations within a company, and after that you become a PM.
Got it. Great to know that. So pretty excited, to hear about your journey, how this APM program interview started, what the entire process like. And you mentioned that, hey, Uber came for the ISB campus. So I assume this is an interview experience of ISB campus, right?
Yeah, definitely. I was recruited through the campus placements, and whatever experience that I'm going to share was a part of the campus placement.
Perfect. Let's begin hearing the entire interview experience at Uber.
Okay. So all right. So a brief overview of what the interview experience is like. So I had to go through almost 5 to 6 rounds of process. The first round was a data analytics round. It was a data analytics test. The second round was resume and cover letter shortlisting, which is pretty standard. And third was the case study round. And then I had to go through 3 rounds of interviews. So now we will actually look at what actually happened in each round and how was my experience and how did I prepare for the for that particular round, right? Fine. Anyway, so the first round was the data analytics round. We are going to talk about resume and cover letter round as well, because these 3, I think they were considered together, although like it feels like they are separate rounds. So first round, the data analytics test, it's a very standard test that we had gotten. I'm not entirely sure of the Uber's internal processes here, but when I Googled data analytics test Uber, I actually got a lot of courses from which I could prepare. So during the data analytics test, it was a 30 question. So they asked us 30 questions, and there was a 2-hour time limit. And all the questions were MCQs. We were given a set of basically a very raw data set. It was a CSV file, and then we were asked questions based on that. Okay, so one of the sample question could be like estimate average ETA in a particular location in a particular city. They give you all the data, all the trips that happened in the last 1 week or 30 days or whatever it is. And then you're supposed to calculate like an average ETA over there. And there are some of the questions are very elaborate in the sense that they ask you questions about search pricing, or they ask you questions about how do you manage like demand and supply, how do you give so when do you incentivize riders versus drivers. So all these like platform questions were also asked. If you've never taken a ride with Uber or with Ola or any other mobility platform, which I know is not the case with most people, it's a little difficult to first understand the jargon itself. And on the second hand, all of the questions actually involved really it involved being extremely comfortable with Excel as well as pivot tables. If you're not really comfortable with pivot tables, it's a little bit challenging to sort of go through this. And so two things basically: be comfortable with Excel and pivot tables, and second thing is be comfortable with the mobility jargon. And now I'm not that comfortable with Excel, or my data analytics skills were not at par, which is why when we got to know that the first round is going to be the data analytics test, I actually took this course from this link, which is over here. It is especially designed to ace the Uber data analytics test. It had all the sample questions. It had all the sample cases. They also give you a data set which is similar to what was given to us. And if you were able to go through all the 60 questions or 30 questions which is given in the course, you will be able to ace the test very comfortably. So that is what I did. Okay, now let's talk about resume and cover letter. This is again, not a lot of companies ask for cover letters, but Uber did ask us for a cover letter and a one-page basic resume. When it comes to resume, I just focused more on achievements and the projects that I did, because for APM programs, they already know that you don't have a PM experience, and the whole point of the program is also to sort of train you in the basics of product management. So which is why I just wanted to show a lot of skill set. I just wanted to show that I'm a fast learner. So those are the aspects that I focused on my resume. With respect to cover letters, again, there is one way to do cover letters, which is essentially writing why do you want to work for the company. But I guess I made it more sort of like a story. I talked about my first ever Uber trip. So again, if you want, you can edit this out, but I'll talk about the story if that is okay.
Yes, please go on.
So, okay, the first time ever I took an Uber trip was when I shifted to Bangalore. I was supposed to meet a friend. It was for dinner. It was at 8 p.m. I've never used any sort of mobility platform before. I was 20 years old. I was very scared because, generally you keep looking at all these stories in the internet and in news that a Uber driver or a Ola driver is sort of assaulting someone else. And since I've never taken a ride before, I was very scared. However, the entire process, but still I had to go to the lunch and the dinner plans that I had with my friend. And I did book a ride. I was scared the entire while, but the driver was very, very friendly, and it was as seamless as possible. And the entire experience, not just on the app, but the trip experience was so beautiful that all those instances or all those news, the stories that I've heard and the fear that was in me was actually gone, because I felt more confident. Actually, I felt more independent at that moment. Until then, wherever I want to go, it's like my mom would drop me or my dad would drop me. So this was like a newfound independence for me. I really enjoyed the fact that I'm able to travel without depending on anyone else. So that was my story, and I included it in the cover letter, and that was actually became a talking point at one point of the interview as well. So it was really nice, and I mean that the first half of the cover letter involved that story, and the second half again I focused more on the kind of projects that I did, the fact that maybe I'm a fast learner, and how can I contribute to Uber, and how is Uber a best fit for my career as well, like how the APM program is going to shape me into becoming a good product manager as well. So I guess those things, I'm assuming that they worked really well for me. This is a small tip you can consider, that whenever you're writing cover letters, always try to relate to the company in some way, and make it in a form of a story, so that the person who's reading it is also not really bombarded with the same old jargon, or the same old cover letter of explaining how you're hardworking and how you have all these skill sets and how they should hire you. But maybe a personal story can actually make it more readable and more interesting. So yeah.
So thanks, Sravya. I think this is a really valuable insight which you're sharing, especially the cover letter part. In India, we haven't seen much of the cover letter trend going on here. But if we have to write in any instance, I think it's very important we relate to that story and come up with own personal experience. Like we talk about empathy, so that is what we have to cover it over here as well. Superb, and kudos to sharing it with the entire audience.
So yeah, so after the data analytics round plus resume and plus cover letter, there were around half the people got eliminated. This was an elimination round. Now we come to the case study round. With case study, we were given a very simple case. One is which is basically Uber is like there have been instances of families using Uber to transport their kids either from their home to school or like to extracurriculars or etc. etc. Currently, Uber has this rule that if you're an under 18 passenger, you cannot ride without an adult. So you can't essentially take an Uber if you're a kid essentially. That is again due to safety reasons and whatnot. But we were given a case study to evaluate this opportunity. Should you build Uber for kids? If yes, what is like the opportunity size going to be like, and how are you going to evaluate this opportunity? And if you decide that this is a good opportunity and Uber should go for it, then in that case, basically, what changes do you have to make on the platform in order to make sure that the ride happens smoothly? So this entire case study, at least the way I saw it, I divided it into two parts. First thing was like a more market sizing feasibility analysis side of things, in order to determine what is the impact going to be like, how is Uber going to benefit it, and basically just to evaluate if there is a need or not. So in order to do that, I did a mix of primary research and secondary research. So with respect to primary research, I actually talked to a lot of parents, and as in order to understand how they are transporting their kids today and what kind of problems do they face. I think first interview was my mom itself, because I know as a kid, like my mom struggled a lot to find transportation, and there were many instances where even there is an auto wala who can take me to and from school or to and from my dance class or music class, etc. If there is on one day, if the auto wala falls sick, and my mom has to arrange for an alternate transportation, it was very difficult. Or I'll have to miss the class. So that those were the only two alternatives, because I have both working parents. It was not really possible for my parents to sort of drop me or pick me up whenever possible. So I did that primary research first, and then with respect to secondary research, I really wanted to quantify few aspects of the problem. For example, I wanted to check how much time does an average parent spend on transporting their kids? What is the amount of money do they spend on it? And what is the value add that Uber can bring in through all of this? There is obvious safety aspect which came out very consistently from both primary and secondary research, because if your kid, again, there is a reason why under 18 passengers can't really take an Uber cab without an adult supervision. And I was also very aware of the fact that you will be sending your kids with a stranger, and kids usually don't have phones, at least in India. So I was very aware of both these aspects, and then accordingly, I did my opportunity evaluation. And once I did the opportunity evaluation, I felt like through the interviews and through the pain points and through the whole analysis, the features were kind of very crystal clear for me. There were a few pain points. For example, how is the kid going to identify the right cab? We as adults, we don't know how to identify an Uber cab like which you have booked. Like I also thought about whether the same cab driver takes the kids every day, or should we keep it more like a platform, or especially from a safety point of view, how will I ensure families that their kids will be safe during the Uber ride? So again, there were a bunch of solutions that I don't want to go too deep into this. However, that is what I did with the case study round. Throughout the case study, some of the things that I kept in mind was my style of doing case studies is generally keep as much analysis, like show your work. Basically, that is my philosophy of whenever I'm cracking a case study. Always show your work. Sometimes the analysis is in your head, but if the recruiter can see only your PPT, so the analysis has to come out on the PPT. Even though you know that you have thought about certain things, just show clearly, very clearly show that, hey, these are the parameters that I considered. This is the feasibility, this is the level of feasibility, this is the opportunity cost. Even if it's like a rough paper calculations, I would always include those pictures also in my case studies. So yeah, so that is what I did with the case study.
Great. And I will just wanted to give a shout out what I really liked about this approach, and I would also urge all the viewers to do, is the primary research, right? That's a kind of a brownie point, and that's kind of, what every recruiter or interviewer would expect. I know we get very few days for doing the case study, but if you at least go and talk to few users, 5 or 10, it will actually change your entire approach of doing this kind of case studies. So yeah, kudos again, Shravya, on bringing that primary research and talking to the users. And sometimes it's very hard to talk to find the users. Whom should you talk to get it?
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, right, reach out to your dear ones, like you reached out to your mother for doing the primary research, and that's what should be the approach for all the candidates doing this kind of case studies.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right on point. Even when I mentor other PM aspirants, or if I talk to ISB students themselves, trying like the amount of insights that you can get by being absolutely empathetic and being absolutely open-minded during a customer interview is like unparalleled. There is always new that you will learn. Sometimes you think so. In this particular case as well, I could have easily been like, okay, how will I think like a parent? Like I could have thought about that and then approach my interview. However, since I talked to my mom, I actually realized that the underlying emotion was not fear but paranoia, and I felt like that paranoia was very important. And every time I was thinking of a solution, my mom was sort of in my head saying that I'm not going to send you if you're not going to be safe. Like that is what my mom kept repeating. And the first question I asked my mom, let's go back like 10 or 15 years back, and let's say if there was Uber at that time, do you think you would have sent me in an Uber to school or somewhere else? And my mom said no. There is no way that is happening. I'm really scared that you go. I mean, like whenever you travel, she's really scared even right now as well, whether I'm reaching safely or not. There is no way a mom is going to send their kids in Uber. So which means that the safety features have to be extremely kid friendly. Like the user experience has to be very kid friendly, as well as they have to actually handle the paranoia of a parent. So I felt like that again made me stand out of all the other case studies as well. So yeah, I guess customer interviews are very important, not just for case studies, even on the job as well. Like you should always talk to your customers.
True, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Let's move on.
Yep. let's hear out the how the actual interviews now looks like.
Yeah. So now we are and 1 second. Okay, so now we are done with the case study round, and I made it to the interview round. The first interview, I felt like it was not exactly like a case-based interview, but it was more like a conversation. The interviewer actually asked me a bunch of questions. Like, again, we started off with my resume and my previous work experience. They asked me to talk about one of the projects that I led from start to finish. There was a small case study on tell me about your favorite product and how would you improve it. In this particular case, I picked Swiggy because um, before Uber, I was also interviewing with Flipkart. And Flipkart also has a case study round during their PM interview process. And I had extensively worked on a problem statement which was based on Swiggy for that particular interview process. So it was very easy for me to sort of get the details of the case, and I was able to present it very articulately as well. So this is again another tip I would say. Anytime, tell me about your favorite product and how would you improve it is a very common question. So if you really want to nail it, spend a lot of time on identifying a problem statement which you know that impacts you as well as users like you. Really think about it deeply, and if you're saying something is your favorite product, you should also know what are the ins and outs of the product. You should be very thorough with every feature and every aspect of that particular product. Sometimes what happens is during improvements, the interviewee suggests something and that is already in the product. So that is actually a red flag, which means that you don't know enough about your favorite product. So that is a way to go about it. And then there were other very small questions, I would say, like for example, what are the elements of a PRD? I was asked to list at least 10 elements of a PRD. So that is something that I was asked. And then there were situational questions. I think what really stood out during my interview process is the fact that there were a lot of situational questions. There was a lot of role playing. I just got this sense that Uber probably wants someone who's very good at stakeholder management. So again, not just in this particular interview, even in the next rounds of interview as well, I was asked a lot of role playing questions. In this particular interview, I was asked, let's say you're a PM, you already have a lot to deliver on your roadmap, and this is literally the last quarter in the year. And a stakeholder comes to you with a request in the last minute, and this is a very big stakeholder. Basically, how will you say no at this point? And there was a back and forth between the interviewer and me. It was a role play activity. And so basically what I focused on was the fact that firstly, I focused on how this particular project is going to impact my metrics. Are they, like, I wanted to consider if the metrics are really, if this is really such a impactful project that maybe it's going to increase my number of riders by 20% or number of rides by 50% or something like that. I wanted to evaluate that. Maybe I can say no based on that. The second thing also was that I had to be very transparent. Like I said, that I'll be very transparent and actually show them the roadmap and actually show them the fact that there are other projects in the roadmap which are much more impactful, which are going to increase our key metrics by a higher percentage than this particular project. And again, be very transparent that you do not have the bandwidth or you're constrained on certain resources, and always say that maybe we can keep it in the backlog and we can take it up in the next year. So this is such a standard PM phrase whenever someone comes to you with a project. Let us keep it in the backlog and reevaluate for next year. So that is what I did. Yeah. So
cool. I think you have pretty much well summarized what were the kind of questions and how you actually approach them. So this will help the viewers get, whenever they hear this kind of question, what they should keep there in mind and answer to the interviewer.
Yeah. Cool. So that was my round one interview experience. So it was really fun because there were a lot of questions rather than doing like one case study. So yeah, I guess. So let's move on to the next round. Okay, so the next round was an entirely a case study round. I was asked about to talk about a product that I hate the most, and then how would I improve it. In this particular case, it was LinkedIn. Like I do not find LinkedIn very useful at all, and there is a lot of scope for improvement. I personally feel that LinkedIn currently there is a lot of network effect in play, but as a product, there could like LinkedIn there is a lot of room for improvement for LinkedIn. I listed some of the parameters because of which I thought I didn't like LinkedIn, and the second thing is I actually again use circles, very basic circles to identify user personas and then identify pain points of the target segment, and then talk about solutions and how will I discuss it. How will I improve it? One of the key things that came out of the interview was also when I talked about solutions. They asked me, how are you going to validate if the solution is going to move your metrics or not? Like they asked me to. So as a part of the case study interview, you list down your solutions, and after that you also talk about how you are going to track, what kind of metrics you're going to track. And then after, generally that is where the interview is over. But they also asked me, how are you going to validate it? So in that particular case, I actually talked about how I'm going to set up experiments and what is my hypothesis going to be for the experiments. I talked about what kind of users will be in the control group and what kind of users will be in the treatment group, and how and what kind of treatment will be given in different groups. And then I will probably look at how they're depending what kind of treatment is actually having most impact on the target metrics, and accordingly I will choose and I will prioritize the final feature. So this was an interesting aspect. But again, given that I was already at a B school, I was doing a market research course, and we were doing experimentation related things. So this is something that I thought about it during the moment. Circles always ends with metrics. Like beyond metrics, you don't really know how you're going to test a product. But I'm really glad that I was able to remember the concepts that I learned in the class and actually come up with like a treatment group and a control group philosophy during the interview. So yeah, and the interviewer seemed happy with the answer. So yeah.
Very glad and well done. And this is again kind of a unique question, which is not asked everywhere, as you mentioned, the experimentation part and also the hate part, right? We always hear, hey, tell me a product you love and how would you improve it? But it's flipped now. Tell me a product you don't like and improve it. And here you have to give the criterias of why you don't like it. So bit out of the box kind of questions. And yeah, great to see the Uber culture all fitting over here during the interviews as well.
Yeah. So this was my last round. This was mostly a behavioral round, entirely behavioral round. This was an entirely role play sort of a round, which revolved around two questions mainly. One is, imagine you have to pitch a project to your senior leadership. So how are you going to pitch your project, and how are you going to ask funding for your project? So first I started out with, it was an imaginary situation. So I just talked about like an overall approach on how I'm going to talk about this project. Like, for example, I wanted to talk about how this is going to benefit users, how this is going to benefit Uber, and how the key metrics are going to get impacted if the project gets funding. Not just that, I also wanted to focus on like some other aspects. For example, when you're working on a very technically challenging project, it's really good for the engineers because they get to learn, and you don't really they get to work on exciting projects. So there are like these other softer aspects other than just like the impact and effort metrics. And also again, it's very important that you align your project is actually aligned with the goals of the leadership, or at least that is how you present it. So that is what I talked about. However, since this was a role play activity, I was constantly said no. Like every time if I say, this is going to impact my key metrics by so and so %, the person, like my interviewer, say no, I'm still not going to fund it, or if I'm going to say that this is aligned with the priorities of the leadership, the the interviewer is very transparent and they clearly say that I have already, like, there are other projects which are better than yours, and I have absolutely no funding with me to fund an additional project, so I do not know. So there again, I think the situation sort of became in a way that I mean, basically, how do I convince the interviewer to prioritize my projects over other projects and get the funding that I want? So this went back and forth for quite some time. Throughout the interview, what I also noticed was like data, being data driven and goals and impacts. All these things are fine. These are very rational aspects of convincing someone. However, the interviewer was slightly nudging me towards the fact that it's not always data. So there are emotional aspects as well. So how are you going to handle that? Like when you're talking to a stakeholder. And then I realized that it's very important that firstly I need to build that trust, that even if you trust me and if you give me the funding, I'm going to get the impact that I'm promising. So that building trust with your stakeholders, I felt was, or at least calling that out, was very important. The second thing is also understanding the goals and priorities of the stakeholder themselves, like on a very personal level. It could be something like maybe they are eyeing for a promotion, maybe they want to they are looking, they themselves are trying to fund, get a very large project or a vertical funded, and they do not want to take any chances in basically developing trust with their leadership. So there are multiple aspects in play, not just from a company point of view, but also you need to think about what are the personal and professional goals of the stakeholder that you're talking about. So once I highlighted those aspects, then the interviewer was a little convinced, and then we moved on to the second question, where I am now the roles are reversed. He is a PM who is trying to get his project funded, and I am a senior executive and I have to say no to the PM. And in this particular case, sorry, in this particular case, he had to. So he was again doing repeating whatever I said in my first answer, that this is going to move the OKRs, this is going to impact, this is in line with whatever goals you have for the company, and he also showed me data points saying that this is definitely going to be a project that is worth your while. And he also brought up a very interesting point, which is, if you do not fund my so he actually so this was like an impromptu conversation, right? He actually made up a situation wherein he said, this project is actually technically challenging, and the engineers are very excited about it. There has been attrition in the company, in the engineering org, because they feel that the projects are very they're not challenging enough. Already some 2 or 3 engineers left the organization. Now if you don't take if you don't fund this project, the remaining 3 people are going to leave the organization, and then you will not have any engineers left to sort of even execute whatever you planned for. So at every corner, I felt like the interviewer was actually putting me in a very tough spot. He was making up all these scenarios, and I felt like these were very real scenarios as well. Like, this is something that you get to handle day to day in your job as well. And again, same thing, this time focused more on the emotional bias. Again, focused more on being very transparent, showing them the fact that this is the roadmap I've planned and this is what I'm going to do. And I absolutely have no space of funding to fund your project. And I also said that I would suggest alternatives in order to retain those engineers so that other projects are not impacted. And again, it went back and forth, but on a high level, this is what I focused on. And then the interviewer was happy and we concluded the interview. So this was the last round, which was entirely behavioral. And out of all the rounds so far, the third round of interview is what I found the most difficult, because what I also realized during the interview was, on some level, either through practice or through books and through mentorship, you can sort of build the product thinking abilities or skills. However, the real leadership or the real stakeholder management skills are very challenging. And there is a personality aspect to it as well. It depends on what kind of personality do you have and how you develop and maintain relationships with your stakeholders, as well as there is a huge part of how do you say no to someone, especially in an organization where, in any organization where resources are limited and the things that you want to do is unlimited. So here I felt like stakeholder management skills were being tested in the truest sense, and also in general, how do you prioritize and how do you communicate your prioritization or your priority to other people in your team. So yeah, so that was my experience.
It might be very scary because APM interviews are asking going into that level in which PM interviews are also not done. So I think this is one of the awesome learning which personally I felt during while talking to you, and the viewers who are watching this, they will also get to know what the real stakeholder management looked like. We just talk about goals alignments, but we have to go one level more to just understand that emotional connect with those stakeholder and what's their goal looks like. So and truly came out in your final interview, Sravya. Congratulations again, Sravya. And I just wanted to thank you on behalf of all the users as well. This is gonna be a very useful video and useful 30 minutes, understanding end to end what does APM program looks like, and especially the interview process at Uber. So, although it's an interview of an APM, but I think even for the product managers or senior product managers, I think this would be pretty similar line what Uber is trying to test with all their candidates.
Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty, I hope the questions were also useful. If there are any PMs out there who are preparing for their interviews, I hope the questions are useful in your preparation. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you once again, Sravya, for being part of this channel, and wish you all the best for your all upcoming challenges at Uber.
Thanks a lot, Sugat. This was really fun. I really enjoyed doing this interview experience video with you. So, yeah.
Thank you.